Dinosaur documentaries were among some of the most popular pieces of dinosaur media, alongside some of the movies that came along during their times. Whenever someone talks about a documentary on Prehistoric Live, you think of Walking with Dinosaurs, When Dinosaurs Roamed America, etc. One I'm going to specifically be discussing in this video is Dinosaur Revolution, a very opinionated documentary among the community. I know I don't usually make content like this, and most of you would rather see me upload stuff about trains with faces. But as someone who wanted to get dinosaur content out sometime, it's best to let that happen. Without further ado, let's talk about the goods and bads on Dinosaur Revolution. Released in 2011, Dinosaur Revolution touched on the era of dinosaurs, showing some of the most up-to-date discoveries on them. This was actually one of the first documentaries I watched growing up. The miniseries ran for 4 episodes, each being a good 40 minutes long, and had begun with the simple storyline, dinosaurs starting in the Triassic and ending in the Cretaceous. What's interesting about the show is the way the episodes were formatted. Episodes 1 and 3 told several different stories showcasing many dinosaurs, while 2 and 4 only focused on one consistent story from start to end. This wasn't the only documentary that did this though. Planet Dinosaur, which also released in 2011, had the same idea with having several stories being shown in one episode. And no, this is not a bad way to present an episode. With showing off many different dinosaurs, it'll help the audience learn more about the ones shown in front of them. Another thing worth mentioning is the scientists and paleontologists that appear in this documentary, all talking about how dinosaurs lived and why they may have done certain things. Though the way they're presented is strange, but I'll talk about that later. Before we get into the positive and negatives of the show, let's go through each episode. As mentioned, the series only ran for 4 episodes. Episode 1, Evolution's Winners, starts off in the Permian period, as 2 carnivorous proto-mammals face extinction. We then transition to the Triassic, as an Eoraptor wanders around avoiding danger from a large crocodile-like reptile called Saurosuchus, finding a mate, and avoids danger again while getting a mate. The story continues as some eggs get eaten by small mammals, but the mate of the Eoraptor we saw before shows up and gets rid of them. One egg manages to be intact and hatches to a baby. The small Eoraptor also narrowly avoids danger while stumbling into the father, and while reunited with the female, managed to get away and outlast the Saurosuchus and walk away into the sun. The next story jumps forward to the Cretaceous period. Yeah, keep in mind in this episode and the third, we'll do a lot of time swapping between periods. We focus on a brightly colored Gigantoraptor performing a mating dance for a female, but messes up when his foot gets stuck into a den with small mouse-like mammals. It ends with the female finding more males that try and impress her. We then travel back to the Jurassic where a Cryolophosaurus couple come across one of its own kind, and the 2 males clash, leaving the weaker one to lose, while the bigger one eats the eggs to start a new bloodline. Pretty messed up. The next story, which is probably my favorite from this episode, showcases a pregnant mosasaurus giving live birth to her babies, leading to some getting eaten by sharks, but she manages to fend them off, brutally, and gives birth to more babies. The final story continues the one about the Cryolophosaurus as we are shown a herd of Glaciosaurus, an ancestor to the sauropods. One of them, however, gets kicked out after trying to attract one of the females, and crosses paths with deadly mosquitoes and the Cryolophosaurus from earlier. After falling in a pit, the muddy dinosaur returns and gets accepted into the herd after the leader and the Cryolophosaurus get run out by the bugs, and episode 1 ends. Episode 2, The Watering Hole, tells the story of an Allosaurus that got a broken jaw when it was young, but managed to live long enough to heal. The Allo gets revenge on a Dinosaurus that broke his jaw by ripping his tail off, while a new foe, a large Torvosaurus, comes in and causes chaos at the Watering Hole, but the 2 rivals come together to defeat it. Once the Watering Hole dries out, most of the dinosaurs leave, while the Allosaurus stays and waits for it to be refilled. Episode 3 has multiple stories like Episode 1. It starts off with 2 packs of Utahraptors hunting a baby sauropod, only to end with its family coming in to help and defeat the raptors. We then transition to Madagascar, where a small dinosaur called Rahunavis flies around, avoiding predators like Majungasaurus, infant versions of it, and giant frogs. It ends with the little dino hitching a ride on a sauropod where it travels through the misty land. Next story shows a herd of Shunosaurus, in which one of them eats strange mushrooms and is pretty much drugged. The sauropod is chased by 2 Sinoraptors, and after getting stuck by rocks, it knocks out one with its tail, and while freeing itself, rolls down a hill and kills off the last Sinoraptor. It ends off with the Shunosaurus recovering from the mushroom and avoids eating it again. We then meet 2 Guanlongs that try and hunt a prehistoric beaver, only to end with them getting sprayed in the eyes and letting the beaver escape. When night falls, the two dinosaurs hunt down a flying squirrel-like mammal, ending with them getting a ride on a sauropod and finding themselves on a rock surrounded by alligators, which probably ate them. My favorite segment features Protoceratops, where a group of younglings get attacked by velociraptors. The youngest of the bunch tries to run away. Before the predators could attack, an old bull Protoceratops comes to the rescue and defeats the raptors. The young and old dinosaurs share some moments, which include traveling together, resting together, and helping getting food. The two find a large herd, and the young Protoceratops joins in, leaving the bull to choose to be alone and likely accepts his fate. The last story cuts to a nest of young Anangura, and their mother makes them learn how to fly, but two of them meet fatal ends while the last one falls onto the beach and narrowly avoids some crocodilians and manages to fly itself. And that marks the end of episode 3. The last episode, Endgame, features the famous Tyrannosaurus Rex. It starts off with the two T-Rexes fighting and ends with one ripping off the other's arm. The one-armed T-Rex returns to his mate and rests while two of their babies play around. This, however, leads to them away from the nest by chasing after another dinosaur and stumbling upon the rival T-Rex, resulting in him eating them, leaving the parents devastated after finding their remains. Afterwards, the two Rexes hunt down a Triceratops. While eating it, the rival T-Rex appears and the one-armed T-Rex does a rematch, but starts to get defeated. The female Rex intervenes and helps her mate defeat the rival by penetrating its neck through one of the trike's horns, killing it. After laying new eggs, one manages to survive and hatches in the female's mouth. A few years pass and the baby T-Rex grows up into a teenager and goes on to try and hunt down an Ankylosaurus, but fails. Instead, it chases some Troodon, or better classified as Pecnidodon, into a cave. While doing so, a large meteor which caused the extinction of the dinosaurs crashes into Earth, destroying forests, making the land white, and killing off the dinosaurs, including the T-Rex family. One Pecnidodon wanders around and finds the dead teenage T-Rex, and with its remaining egg sits inside the Rex's mouth. It ends with what dinosaurs had been descendants of, birds. It zooms out to show Earth as another meteor glides past, and that marks the end of the entire series. But what did I like and dislike about it? Well, it's time to talk about my opinions and thoughts on this documentary. Here are the positives and negatives. First, we're going to start off with the good things about the series. Now, I am very glad that there are a lot of positive things to say about it. Firstly are the dinosaurs themselves. While most of their models are a bit outdated compared to what we now know about dinosaurs, they are still wonderful to look at and don't go crazy on how they should look. With that being said, the designs are also another point to make. I really love the unique patterns and colors that each dinosaur has, from the bright orange feathers that the Velociraptor has, to the colorful feathers Gigantoraptor has. It just makes you want to look at them even more with interest. I don't really think there is a creature that you would call dull looking in this documentary. Maybe the Mosasaur, but that thing lives in water, so it's fine. The environments are also good. Even if you've seen most of them in other documentaries, like the forest or the deserts, it's still good to view nature. To add on to it, I think it was smart with how well the dinosaur designs match well to the environment. There would be tannish brownish dinosaurs for deserts, vibrant colors for dinosaurs in forests, and even the pterosaurs nearby cliffs and shores is a good fit as it matches what some birds do today. Another thing to note is the dinosaurs that were chosen. Usually in dinosaur documentaries, you see dinosaurs like T-Rex, Triceratops, or Allosaurus, but in this, you see a bunch of different species you may not have heard of. I mean, how often are dinosaurs like Shunosaurus, Eoraptor, Cryolophosaurus, and Torvosaurus used? Maybe you see them once or twice, but barely all the time. Moving on from that, it's also worth mentioning how well the stories are written as well. Despite how some end in goofy or sad ways, some actually end on pretty good and heartwarming notes to show the success of these animals. Then there's the narrator of the series, who is honestly alright. Rick Robles may not be on the same level as people like Kenneth Branagh, who narrated Walking with Dinosaurs. He still does a good job at telling the stories. To be honest, I kinda like how whenever there's a new segment, Robles just explains where and when we are, tells the dinosaurs that appear, and then stops talking and lets the story play, and sometimes says something at the end like a message. That's pretty nice since we don't need everything to be explained when we can just watch what's happening on screen. Lastly, I want to talk about the music. I really enjoyed the different themes that were used. They all fit nicely and even some sound peaceful. Some of my favorites include the music used during the Utahraptor chase, and the ending theme in the Protoceratops story. Leggett did a great job composing the different scores. There's even a playlist on YouTube of the music I used for the video. Now on to the negatives. A lot of people don't really like this series all too well, and that's completely fine. There are several reasons as to what makes it bad in people's eyes. One thing is the dinosaurs' behavior. A lot of them act a bit too comedic, and many segments add in lots of humor with them, especially when that comedy is filled in with lots of death. I guess this was targeted for kids in a certain age group. They also act a bit too human-like with the way they express themselves. For example, when the mother T-Rex finds out that her younglings were killed, she gets upset and grieves over the loss, while her mate tries to comfort her by laying his head on hers. Now, that's not to say that dinosaurs wouldn't have had this trait, there is a chance they might, but the fact it's expressed a lot throughout the series is sort of a problem. After all, they are animals and should at least have some traits modern ones have today. There's also moments where the animation can be a bit wonky at times. This isn't such a big problem to talk about, but it's really noticeable in the first episode. However, the animation gets better for the rest of the show, so like I said, it's not a big issue. Next, there's the people that are featured in the documentary. While it's cool to see some familiar scientists and paleontologists, I bet you remember this guy from Dinosaur Train, the way they are shown is weird. Whenever they pop in to talk, they have this strange holograph-like transition, which isn't that bad. The problem is after they transition in. Why are they shown as transparent? It adds nothing to the documentary, which makes it pointless. It's almost distracting. Who decided to make these people like that? And it's not even just them. The dinosaurs have that as well when shown in the fossil room, except they are shown in a complete holograph look. And it makes it even more strange when some don't even have that effect at all. Anyway, the last thing I want to note is the amount of unused creatures that were supposed to appear. My guess is that more episodes were planned or they were going to be longer. Some creatures had 3D models already made, while others were still in storyboards. What's interesting is how the Acrocanthosaurus and Tenontosaurus had models, but were used in another documentary, Monsters Resurrected, showing the acro coming to life from a fossil and leaving a museum and hunting down the herbivores. While seeing the nice designs of dinosaurs meant to be used, it still sucks none of them were shown on screen. You're telling me we were gonna have Spinosaurus appear? Bruh. And that wraps up my positive and negatives. Let's finish up this review with my overall thoughts. So that was Dinosaur Revolution. Looking back at it, I can see why lots of people didn't like it that much. But from viewing past that, there are a bunch of things that make it worth watching. For me though, it's a mixed bag. While I am glad to say lots of good things about it, there are bad things that bring it down. However, you still learn things out of this, like new species, environments dinosaurs may have lived in, and more. I would recommend watching this series if you want some entertainment out of dinosaurs. It's no Walking with Dinosaurs, but it's still something to see if you want to get into prehistoric life. So what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it was a good documentary that made smart ways to portray dinosaurs? Or was it some silly mess that was trying to be educational? Whatever you think about Dinosaur Revolution, we can agree that this was part of some of our nostalgia.